Ladies and gentlemen, Asian guy here. I need you to stop scrolling. I need you to put down whatever you're doing and focus on what I'm about to tell you, because the geopolitical chessboard just flipped in a way that no one saw coming. We are witnessing the opening move of a new era, and it happened on the worst possible day for the worst possible person. On January 7th, Mojtaba Khamenei officially assumed power as supreme leader of Iran. This was supposed to be his coronation day. This was supposed to be the moment where he stepped out of his father's shadow and declared to the world that the Islamic Republic would continue, that the revolution would endure, that nothing had changed. But before the ink could dry on the state media press releases, before the propaganda videos could even finish uploading, Israel launched the most devastating airstrike on Iranian soil in modern history. And Donald Trump didn't just react, he endorsed it, he celebrated it. He signaled to the world that the rules have changed and that the old game is over. Let me give you the timeline, because timing is everything in this story. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who ruled Iran with an iron fist for 35 years, died on January 6th. The transition was supposed to be seamless. Mojtaba was groomed for this role. He controlled the Revolutionary Guard. He had the loyalty of the hardliners. The succession was locked in. By January 7th, he was officially sworn in as the new supreme leader. And then, roughly 14 hours after he took power, Israeli F-35s crossed into Iranian airspace and obliterated a Quds Force command center on the outskirts of Tehran. They didn't hit a random military base. They didn't target some proxy militia in Syria. They hit Tehran. They hit the heart of the regime. They sent a message that was impossible to misinterpret. This wasn't about deterrence. This was about dominance. This was Israel telling Mojtaba Khamenei that his first day in power would also be a lesson in humiliation. Now, most politicians would issue a carefully worded statement. They would condemn the violence. They would call for de-escalation. They would say something vague about the importance of regional stability. That's what Biden would have done. That's what the State Department playbook demands. But Trump didn't do that. Trump posted on Truth Social within 3 hours. He didn't condemn Israel. He didn't urge restraint. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Israel had every right to defend itself and that Iran's new leadership would learn very quickly what happens when you threaten America's allies. He framed the strike not as an escalation, but as a consequence. He positioned it as justice. And then he added a line that sent shockwaves through every foreign ministry in the Middle East. He said that when he returns to office, there will be no more tolerance for Iranian aggression, and that the days of treating the regime with kid gloves are over. That is not a statement. That is a declaration of intent. That is Trump telling Netanyahu, do what you need to do, I've got your back. This is where the story gets dangerous. Because Mojtaba Khamenei is not his father. Ali Khamenei was a pragmatist. He was brutal, yes, but he understood limits. He knew when to push and when to pull back. He played the long game. He built the nuclear program slowly, methodically, always staying just below the threshold that would trigger a full-scale American or Israeli military response. But Mojtaba is different. Mojtaba is younger, angrier, and more ideological. He rose to power through the Revolutionary Guard, not through the clerical establishment. He doesn't have the political instincts of his father. He has the instincts of a soldier. And soldiers don't back down when they're hit. They hit back. The question is not whether Iran will retaliate. The question is when and how. And the timing of Trump's statement makes that retaliation almost inevitable. Let me explain the trap that just got set. Trump is not president yet. He doesn't take office until January 20th. That means for the next 2 weeks, Biden is still technically in charge. But Biden is a lame duck. He has no political capital left. His foreign policy team is demoralized. His administration has spent the last year trying to revive the Iran nuclear deal, trying to de-escalate tensions, trying to contain the conflict. And now Trump, from the sidelines, just undercut all of that. He gave Israel a green light that Biden never authorized. He created a situation where if Iran retaliates against Israel, Biden will be forced to respond. But if Biden responds weakly, Trump will attack him for being soft. And if Biden responds strongly, he'll be accused of starting a war to help his party's image before leaving office. Either way, Biden loses. Either way, Trump wins. This is political warfare at the highest level. Trump just weaponized the transition period to box in his predecessor and embolden his ally. And Israel knows it. Netanyahu knows that in 2 weeks, he'll have a president who will not restrain him. So why wait? Why negotiate? Why hold back? Think about what this means for the next 13 days. Every decision Biden makes will be filtered through the lens of Trump's shadow presidency. If Biden calls Netanyahu and demands restraint, Netanyahu can simply wait him out. If Biden threatens to withhold military aid, Trump can promise to restore it on day one. If Biden tries to coordinate with European allies to pressure Israel, Trump can tell those same allies that any agreement they make will be void in 2 weeks. Biden has become irrelevant in his own presidency, and that creates a vacuum where Israel can act without consequences, A vacuum where Iran feels compelled to respond without knowing who they're actually dealing with. A vacuum where miscalculation becomes almost inevitable because no one knows what the rules are anymore. Trump didn't just endorse the strike. He created a power vacuum at the worst possible moment. Now let's talk about what this strike actually means for the region. The target wasn't random. The Quds Force is the external operations wing of the Revolutionary Guard. They are the people who run Hezbollah. They are the people who supply the Houthis in Yemen. They are the people who coordinate attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria. They are the nerve center of Iran's proxy network. By hitting a Quds Force command center inside Tehran, Israel didn't just kill a few officers. They shattered the perception of Iranian invincibility. For years, Iran has operated under the assumption that their homeland was untouchable. They could launch attacks from Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, but Tehran itself was off limits. That psychological barrier just got erased. Israel proved that they can strike anywhere, anytime, and that the Iranian air defense system, which was supposed to protect the capital, is either incompetent or compromised. And if the air defenses are compromised, that means Israeli intelligence has penetrated the regime at the highest levels. That means someone inside Iran is feeding targeting data to Mossad. That means Mojtaba Khamenei is not just dealing with an external enemy. He's dealing with a cancer inside his own government. This is where the escalation spiral becomes unavoidable. Mojtaba cannot ignore this strike. If he does nothing, he looks weak. If he looks weak, the hardliners who put him in power will turn on him. He'll be seen as a puppet, as a man who inherited a throne but not the strength to sit on it. So he has to respond. But how? If he launches missiles at Israel, Israel will respond with a bigger strike. If he activates Hezbollah, Israel will flatten southern Lebanon. If he orders the Houthis to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the U.S. Navy will get involved. And if the U.S. Navy gets involved, we're not talking about a regional skirmish anymore. We're talking about a war that could pull in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Turkey, and potentially even Russia and China, depending on how far it escalates. And Trump just told the world that he supports Israel's right to hit first and ask questions later. That is not a recipe for de-escalation. That is a recipe for catastrophe. But here's the part that no one is talking about. This isn't just about Israel and Iran. This is about Trump reclaiming control of Middle East policy before he even takes office. For 4 years, Biden tried to rebuild the international coalition that Trump destroyed. He tried to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal. He tried to reset relations with Europe. He tried to distance the U.S. from Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. And Trump just torched all of that in a single Truth Social post. He didn't consult with the State Department. He didn't coordinate with allies. He didn't wait for a briefing. He saw an opportunity to reassert dominance, and he took it. And the message to the world is clear. When Trump is back in power, American foreign policy will be transactional, unilateral, and unpredictable. If you're an ally, you get support. If you're an adversary, you get crushed. There is no middle ground. There is no diplomacy. There is only force and the threat of force. Now let's talk about what this means for markets, for energy, for global stability. The Strait of Hormuz is the most important oil choke point in the world. Roughly 21 million barrels of oil pass through that strait every single day. That's about 21% of global petroleum consumption. If Iran decides to close that strait, either with mines, missiles, or proxy attacks on tankers, the price of oil will double overnight. We're not talking about a gradual increase. We're talking about a panic spike that crashes supply chains, triggers inflation, and forces central banks to choose between fighting price increases and preventing a recession. And it's not just oil. Natural gas flows from Qatar, which supplies Europe and Asia, also move through that region. If those flows get disrupted, Europe's energy crisis, which never really ended, will come roaring back. Germany will be forced to restart coal plants, France will ration electricity, and the political fallout will empower the far-right parties that are already gaining ground across the continent. Iran doesn't even need to close the strait completely. They just need to make it dangerous enough that insurance companies refuse to cover tankers. Lloyd's of London is already recalculating premiums. Shipping companies are already rerouting vessels. The threat alone is enough to spike prices. And that threat is now very real. Because Mojtaba Khamenei just watched his first day in power get turned into an international humiliation. He watched Israeli jets violate Iranian airspace with impunity. He watched Trump celebrate it. And he knows that if he does nothing, his own military will question his authority. The Revolutionary Guard doesn't follow weak leaders. They follow strength. And strength, in their calculation, means retaliation. So the market isn't pricing in a possibility, it's pricing in a probability. A probability that within the next week, Iran will do something that forces the world to hold its breath. But here's what makes this situation even more volatile. Trump's endorsement of the Israeli strike sends a signal to every other actor in the region. It tells Saudi Arabia that they have a free hand to confront Iran without worrying about American pushback. It tells the UAE that they can pursue their own security interests without consulting Washington. It tells Turkey that the old rules don't apply anymore. And it tells Russia and China that the US is pivoting back to a policy of confrontation. That is a dangerous message to send when the world is already fracturing into competing blocs. We are watching the return of great power competition in real time. The post-Cold War era, where America could dictate terms and enforce stability through sheer dominance, is over. We are entering a multipolar world where regional powers are willing to test limits, where nuclear thresholds are being probed, and where miscalculation can spiral into conflict faster than diplomacy can contain it. And Trump knows this. He's not naive. He understands that chaos creates leverage. He understands that when the world is unstable, countries come to Washington looking for protection, for deals, for access. He turned that instinct into a business model, and now he's turning it into a foreign policy doctrine. The strike on Tehran wasn't just Israel acting alone. It was Israel acting with the confidence that Trump, even from outside the White House, has their back. And that confidence changes everything. It changes the risk calculus for every decision that Iran makes. It changes the calculations for Hezbollah, for Hamas, for the Houthis. It changes the way that Saudi Arabia and the UAE view their own security. And it changes the way that Russia and China view American resolve. This single strike on Mojtaba Khamenei's first day in power just reset the Middle East chessboard. And Trump's reaction made it clear that the next 4 years will not be about diplomacy. They will be about dominance. So what happens next? That is the question everyone is asking. Will Iran retaliate immediately, or will they wait? Will they go after Israel directly, or will they strike American assets? Will they close the Strait of Hormuz, or will they launch a cyber attack on critical infrastructure? No one knows. But what we do know is that the window for miscalculation is wide open. We know that Mojtaba Khamenei is under immense pressure to prove himself. We know that Trump is signaling that restraint will be seen as weakness. We know that Israel has just demonstrated that they are willing and able to strike the Iranian homeland. That is a combustible mix. That is a scenario where one bad decision, one miscommunication, one technical failure can trigger a war that no one actually wants, but everyone feels compelled to fight. And here's the final piece of the puzzle. Oil markets are already pricing in risk. Brent crude spiked 4% in the hours after the strike. Gold jumped to a new all-time high. Safe haven assets are being accumulated. That tells you that institutional money is preparing for instability. They are hedging against the possibility that this situation spirals out of control. And if institutional money is hedging, that means they have intelligence that the public doesn't. That means someone somewhere knows that the risk of escalation is real. So watch the premiums, watch the volatility, watch the currency flows, because the market always knows before the headlines admit it. And right now the market is screaming that we are on the edge of something big. I am John A.G. from Currency Archive. Stay alert.